Welcome to the show, everyone. This is Kenny Long on the UDriveU Network, Trucking with Authority, Rates and Lanes group. I'm going to give this a few minutes, let a few people pop in. I'm kind of impromptu again, Sunday afternoon. I'm hanging out in the office. I was putting some other content together. Had the camera set up, and I thought, well, why not do a live stream? So, should be live in the Rates and Lanes Facebook group. We're live on Blog Talk Radio. Call-in number at the bottom of the screen. Anybody that wants to get your own authority, change business models completely. If you want to get into growing your company, growing your fleet, whether you're under somebody else's authority or maybe you want to get your own authority, add trucks and so forth, we're going to talk about that today. If you have any questions or comments, I have a whole checklist I'll go through and I'll point you in the direction where you can find this online, actually in some of the Facebook groups. But if you have questions or comments, with the rates the way they are, it is just unbelievable how many people are applying for their authority. And there are people coming out of the woodwork. I've been doing this for a long time. I actually got a comment, a message sent to me, a private message sent to me yesterday, because there are some people that are looking to make some moves in their trucking business, and they're looking around for advice, and there are so many of these new experts popping up, and they're all looking for a handout. They're all looking for money. They're all selling something. And most of them, by and large, have some really, really bad advice. So if you've been following me for a while, you'll know I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not trying to sell anything. I've got a few affiliate links I might send you, but I'm not pushing anything. And if there's anything that I can do to help you grow your business, accelerate your career, your business, whatever it is, that's what the show is all about. So give us a call, 917-889-9924. I've got the switchboard up on one screen here. I'm trying to pull up the YouTube stream on the other. We are streaming live on YouTube, on the UDriveU network. We're streaming live on Facebook in the Rates and Lanes and the UDriveU group. I'm going to share this out to a few others. If you don't mind, everyone, like, share, whatever, get this out, because I would like to get as many people on this as possible. This is a hot topic right now, and I think just going live, there's a lot of recorded information. A lot of people are breaking it down, trying to make it more complicated than it is. It's really not that difficult, and you know, I did this, and I'm going to go over basically the same checklist I went over the first time I did this show back in 2014. So we will go over that, and hopefully we can help a few people out tonight. We will go over that. Whoop. Oh, see, that's working. Let's turn this volume down here. Got a few people on the the YouTube channel already making comments. I appreciate that. The only person worth a damn to listen to in the YouTube trucking community. I appreciate it. I try to be. One of the things I told that person yesterday is I've kind of backed off a little bit because I don't want to be lumped in with all these people trying to be the new experts, because a lot of them have no clue. A lot of them are giving horrible, horrible advice, or they're promoting products. Some of them are pushing these affiliate links, and they're trying to do everything but trucking. They want you to grow under their pyramid schemes for their affiliates, for their factoring companies and load boards and everything. And I've got all those affiliate links, but I don't push that. If I can offer to you so you get some free trials, I'll tell you what I think. I'll demo some stuff for you. I've got things I recommend, but I'm not trying to sell anything for anybody. So right now, this is free information. I'm going to give it to you. This is the way I would do it. I can help you set it up. I have helped people set these up at no cost. That being said, there are so many lately, I can't do it for everyone. So just this live stream is probably going to be your key to getting started if this is what you want to do. I think there's a lot of misinformation, bad information, or miscommunication, which is why I think some phone calls on this would be great. Getting your authority, growing your fleet, adding trucks, or if you want to back it up and maybe you are a driver looking to get your truck for the first time, we can talk about that too, with the end goal of potentially getting your own authority in the future. Let me take these earbuds out because they don't work very well. Distracting until I get a phone call. So how many people we have on now? We're We've got some questions coming in on YouTube. Let me see if I can pull up the Facebook stream. I've got too many things going on. Like I said, we are live on Blog Talk. Numbers at the bottom of the screen if you want to call in. Live on Blog Talk, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, in multiple groups. There's no way for me to see all the comments coming from all the different locations. Once I kind of wrap things up, I'll do that. But if you have any questions or comments and you want to get it out or it pertains to what we're talking about, call the number. You can listen to the show if you're driving. You can go ahead and listen online. On the phone, rather, 917-889-9924. If you have anything you want to add or say, go ahead, press 1. That raises your hand. You're not going to come on the just live straight away. You'll come into the waiting room here. I don't have a call screener tonight. It's Sunday afternoon, and I'm in the office by myself. So if you have anything you want to bring into the show, go ahead and call the number on the bottom there, 917-889-9924. There are no codes to put in. There's nothing to download. You literally just make a phone call. When you get in there, it'll tell you that you're part of the show, and you're in the waiting room. You'll be listening to me. If you have anything you want to add, just go ahead and press 1, and I'll see you on the switchboard on one of these screens here. So I've got too many different groups going. I'll try to get to some of these at the end. Let's see. I can't even see how many people are watching anything, as I've got just so much going on here. All right, I see on Facebook we've got a couple of people. Matthew Kane, rightload.com. Matthew, while we're waiting, why don't you, if you want to type something about RightLoad, we've talked about that. Now, I already started this by saying I don't promote anything. I'm not pushing anything. I've got some affiliate links here and there. And in my Facebook groups, I usually delete and push people out that are trying to push their stuff. Matthew Kane is one of those. He's got rightload.com. When he's promoting the stuff, and I had a phone call conversation with him. I guess it's been a couple months now, but I told him he's welcome to discuss it, just not promote it. So this is your chance if you want to go ahead and throw something out there, and I'll talk about it for a minute while I'm waiting for some people to jump in. Sharon jumped in on Facebook. I think this is this is the Facebook stream. All right, everyone, we'll get started here. Now, I have a checklist to apply for your authority. I am missing a couple of things off the top of that checklist. I'm going to talk about that before we go through it. But if you're interested, if you want to get your authority, I have a checklist with all of the links. I've got it here. I printed it out before the show. It's got all of the links. It's got the basic process for what you need to do to get set up and get started. Everybody is going to be a little different in what you want to do first and how you want to go about getting started. So I want to talk about that first. And I think this is the one thing that most other people are forgetting. It's something that in the past, when I've talked about this, I literally started at the top of the list here, which is not really where you start. This is where you start once you get to the process of applying. Okay, so step 1 for applying. But before you get to the application process, there's a few things that you need to get in line. And again, this is where there's a lot of misinformation and or bad information out there. And we'll talk about that first. So Matt has opted out. So, but rightload.com is his website. He's trying to do a direct shipper load board, which is an interesting concept, and he's been getting some traction with that over the past couple of years. So, all right. I'm scrolling back and forth between these. So step 1 for getting your authority, step 1, and the one thing that very few people talk about. I talk about it often on all my different shows. I talk about it with new owner-operators that I hire on to Patriot Star. I talk about it with new people I'm getting started. Almost nobody does this step. Even after I explain it, I've done shows entirely dedicated to this. But unless you do this step, nothing else after this matters, because this first step dictates everything else you do. And that first step is write a business plan. Literally, write a business plan. Just a pen and paper. You can have a pencil and a really big eraser, but you really need to put some research, some thought, and some planning into what you want to do with your business. So number one is write a business plan. And as I go through this checklist, I'm going to come back to that and tell you why it's important that you have a plan. With the questions and comments that I'm getting from various sources, emails, from YouTube comments, from the Facebook feeds and the groups, the number one thing that you could do to answer all those questions is write a business plan. And part of writing a business plan is doing the research and figuring out your end game. Why are you doing it? Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why, and that's really what a business plan is all about. Why do you want to get your own authority? I have owner-operators that want to change to different trailer types, or they want to maybe move on and, or get multiple trucks under my authority, or go get their own authority, or what have you. And they always want to do these different things. And my question is always, why? What is the goal? What is the end game? For some people, it's, I just want more money. Okay. What does it take to make more money? Does buying a second truck earn you more money? Does getting your authority earn you more money? Because those are the steps that oftentimes are being proposed. But a lot of times, that's not going to reach the goal. I know people that have their own authority that make less than being leased to some of the mega fleets. It happens all the time. In fact, I would say in the beginning, the first couple of years, there are a lot of people that fall into that category. People that get their own authority to make more money. They definitely probably improve their cash flow, but they don't make more money. They don't have more money in their pocket at the end of the year. I see Aries Blue on Facebook here says, not everyone knows how to do a business plan. And that's absolutely true. I've done a show just like this on how to do a business plan. Ideally, you want it to be as detailed as possible, because the more detail you put in, the more thought you have to put in to create it. So I like to see a business plan that's about 10 pages long. If you go to SBA.gov, there are formats on how to write a business plan. There's an outline, a template. They actually have two templates. One of them is a complete full business plan, which I recommend. And one of them is just basically a simplified version, Cliff Notes version, if you will. Both of them have the same basic content. The Cliff Notes version, the simplified version, is just a couple of pages, very basic information. But if you open up the SBA.gov and you click on the business plan and you download that outline, if you cannot answer and write in some pretty good detail each one of the categories that falls under the business plan, and your executive summary, which is essentially the very first page of your business plan, if that doesn't make sense to you, then you're not ready to make this move with your business. You're not ready to buy your truck. You're not ready to lease to a carrier. You're not ready to add trucks. You're not ready to get your authority, grow a fleet, what have you. If you can't answer those basic questions, because those basic questions are simple things, like where will you get freight? What is the need for you in the market? How is your business structured? And we're going to get into some of this as we go down. What role do you play in the business? Where does the equipment come from? So if you are getting your authority, where are you going to get customers? You plan on getting load board freight. I saw one of the comments already was just which load board is the best. I will tell you right off the bat, if you are getting your authority, ideally, you should have a direct customer already lined up before you even apply. And yes, that is possible. It's not common, but it is possible. The current environment in the trucking industry, the way things are currently done, is not how it was just a few years ago. You have to understand, when I started my authority under Patriot Star, under my current company in 2012, there were no real decent online load boards. DAT was out there, but you actually had to download a program to your computer. Did not work on Apple. Did not have a website. You had to download a program that would communicate through the internet. Internet Truck Stop was around, but they were just getting started. There was no competition between them and DAT at the time. There was completely different products. And Internet Truck Stop really upped the game. You have multiple other online load boards that have come up now. It wasn't really until about 2014 or so, a couple years after, that the load boards started to change the way they are. That was only 7 years ago. Prior to that, it was common and almost required for a carrier to go out and have their own customers before they even got authority. I know I did. We had nursery customers, and we had a direct relationship, and that was what we did. Elizabeth and I ran Team Freight, and we did that in the beginning almost exclusively every spring. That was our only customer, and they kept us busy. And it wasn't until we started adding on other trucks that we really started to grow with the brokers that we used and use the load board as a primary source of freight. And even today, we have conference calls with all of my owner-operators that are leased to me, and my recommendation is to develop certain lanes so that we can go out and establish direct customers for those trucks, because load boards should be secondary. A lot of people right now are getting their authority with the intention of using load boards as their primary source of freight. It's possible. It's doable. A lot of people are doing it. But there's another way. And if you do some research and you make some phone calls, you do some of the hard work first, it might set you off in a much better direction than if you just fumble along and hope for the best. Why are you getting your authority? I don't know. Somebody else told me at the truck stop that if I got my own authority, I could make more money. Oh, where will you get more freight? I don't know. I heard there's load boards. There's online places you can search for them. Well, if I was buying a car, I could look on the classified ads in the newspaper or Craigslist or whatever, but that's probably not the best place to go look for a new car. You know, you might want to go actually talk to the people directly that have them, the dealers or what have you. There are places to look for stuff. There are classified sections, but that's really all the load boards are. It's a classified ad. Try to catch some of these comments. Again, I can't look at every stream I've got going. I've got so many different, it's shared in multiple groups, and it's shared on YouTube and Blog Talk and so forth. I do have a couple callers on Blog Talk. If you want to call in, if you want to make any comments, if you have any questions about this process, go ahead, call the number at the bottom of the screen, 917-889-9924, and we'll get you on live, and you can ask questions, and we can have a discussion about it. But a business plan is number one. And I know not everybody knows how to do a business plan, and that's probably why nobody does a business plan. But why not? Any other business you go to, starting a business plan is an elementary thing. It really is. A lot of people just wing it, and those are the people most prone to fail. So planning is a key. We didn't invade Europe on D-Day without a plan in place. And if we had just sent everybody over there and said, I know we want to win this war, let's just send everybody over there and hope for the best, we probably would not have had the same turnout or same outcome. So having a plan is imperative and definitely improves your chances of success 100-fold. A couple of questions coming in. I already see these. I'm going to try to hop around as best I can between these groups, but it makes it difficult. So Taylor has a comment. Why would someone with their own authority have less money than being under a carrier? Reason being, there are a lot of expenses and a lot of risks that you take once you get your authority. And unless you have a good plan for that, the biggest expense is insurance, especially being out of certain areas, age groups, your MVR, your history, your employment history. All of those things play into your insurance cost. Insurance is the number one biggest cost. I have seen insurance quotes upwards of $50,000, $50,000 for one truck, one driver, and 1 year, $50,000. Now that's an outlier. That's definitely not the norm, but it is relatively common to see $25,000 to $30,000 for the first year. Some people are lucky, get in with some maybe subpar insurance companies and are able to get something in the neighborhood of $12,000 a year, but that is the exception, not the rule. Insurance is one of the biggest things. And the insurance rates usually don't go down for at least the first couple of years. Usually after the second renewal, you might see a reduction in insurance. By then, though, insurance rates go up. You got to figure an average of about 5 to 10% increase in insurance rates every year. That's what insurance companies tend to file with the states. Every year, about 5 to 10%. So by the time you get 2 years in, your insurance rates have kind of caught up. So you might see a bit of a reduction. So right off the bat, you see less money because you've got higher expenses. You have all of the upfront cost of getting started, whereas a carrier usually cushions that a little bit for you. Different deductions and discounts that the carrier may be able to offer. Once a carrier gets to a certain number, they can negotiate better discounts in certain places. Some of the mega fleets have mega discounts. And there's ways for some smaller carriers to tap into that. There's even ways for some small single truck operators to tap into that, but that does require a little bit more research, going back to the business plan. Taylor here is one of my owner-operators. He said he was quoted $40,000 at Progressive before he chose to go with Patriot Star in the beginning. And there's a lot of factors that play into that. I know he's based out of Florida, a little bit younger. Everything else is MVR and everything is clean, but those are some major factors right there. And a $40,000 hit, and usually you need about 20-25% up front. So figure about $8,000 to $10,000 up front just to get the policy started. All right, I'm going to keep on moving. So business plan number one, I think I've spent plenty of time beating that horse. So all right, so being a carrier, do I have to get a bond in place for a direct shipper? Negative, no. The bond that you hear about brokers getting does nothing to protect the shipper. A broker's bond is to protect the carrier. That's one of the reasons why carriers go through brokers, because their payments are protected. They have that bond. Minimal protection, to be honest, very minimal. It's $75,000 bond is all that's required. You have brokers that are moving multi-millions of dollars, some millions daily. That $75,000 doesn't cover much, but it's something. So if they default on one or two small invoices, you might have some coverage there. Does nothing, though, for the shipper. Shippers, by and large, in my experience, they don't ask a lot of questions. Some of them may not have contracts. They might wonder why you need a contract. A lot of them are, especially if you're a small trucking company, just a small fleet, one or two trucks. If you go into a shipper, the types of shippers that you should be looking for are the small mom and pop shops that want to deal with small carriers because they don't want the red tape of dealing with these giant corporation conglomerate trucking companies or brokers. So absolutely, you don't need anything like that. It's a good idea to have insurance, make sure that you understand what their product values are and so forth. But again, you can make that sales call. You can talk to them before you even have your authority set up. You can go in and say, look, I see that you have freight moving on such and such lane. I would like to have the opportunity to cover that and provide the capacity that you need. Will you allow me to do that, Mr. Shipper? Yes or no? You work all that out, you shake hands, you agree. Then you go out and you buy a truck. You don't even have to own a truck. You buy a truck and you get your authority and you service that customer. I have helped people get started that way. And it's not uncommon. And it used to be much more common. Now there's this misconception that you have to work with brokers first, and that's not the case. All right, we'll keep moving here. So step two. Step two is the business entity. What will you form for your business? There's a few different options. You can just be a sole proprietor, meaning you work for yourself, your own name on the side of the truck, literally your name, or a DBA, which is still sole proprietor. So instead of Kenny Long Trucking, I might be Patriot Star Trucking, and I could be a DBA, doing business as Kenny Long, doing business as Patriot Star. All the taxation, everything will go under my Social Security number. I can get an EIN number to work with that, and I can have an EIN number tied directly to me, and everything can flow through me. And for most people, that is all you need. Now, you might want to talk to an accountant and you might want to talk to an attorney. Be cautious, though, because attorneys will tell you the worst possible case scenario. Accountants will do whatever it takes to save you tax money on their books, but not necessarily for you. So do your own due diligence, do some homework, ask a lot of questions, ask the attorneys, ask the accountants questions on what you should do. Sole proprietor for most people is all you need, even if you get your own authority. Because a sole proprietor is simple and easy. There's no reason to complicate that relationship. If you will be one truck, one driver, driving it yourself, running it yourself, everything on your own, sole proprietor is probably fine until you reach a certain dollar amount, which for most people is in the $70,000 to $80,000 range for net profits, meaning that's the amount that you actually pay tax on. When you get $70,000 to $80,000 net, then sometimes it makes sense to go with an LLC or an S Corp, C Corp possibly, but usually not. Usually it doesn't make sense. Liability separation. Again, talk to an attorney. They will tell you worst case scenario, you should absolutely have LLC or you should have a corporation to protect you from liability, but they will also tell you that it's very, very, very paper thin veil that they put up, because you own the company. You own the truck. You drive the truck. You dispatch the truck. You work on the truck. Everything else is you. It's all you in the truck, right? There's nobody else involved. So if you are in some type of fatality accident, who do they point the finger at? Do they point the finger at your LLC? Well, you own the LLC. You are still the driver. They're going after you anyway. Even if you had another driver in the truck and there was some separation, you have a whole office full of people that dispatch it, that work on it, that do everything. You personally will be pulled into that lawsuit as an owner of the LLC. You can bet on it, because you, as the owner of the company, have the deepest pockets. Now, at that point, that corporate veil may protect you a little more because you were not directly involved, but you still own the company and they will still put you in for liability. But if you are all of those other roles, the liability separation really is not there. So if your business plan, going back to your business plan, if your business plan is to have just one truck, one trailer, one driver, you do everything, you're the head cook and bottle washer, as they say, if you do it all, according to your business plan, you probably don't need that LLC or S Corp. Now, as far as which entity, if you decide to go with LLC, S Corp, C Corp, and so forth, which one should you use? Again, there's no easy answer to that either. Most places an LLC is probably the better choice. I can't guarantee that, because not only at the federal level for taxes, but also at the state level. For example, where our business is located in Tennessee. The state of Tennessee taxes corporations, whether it's a C Corp or an S Corp. They don't distinguish. They tax corporations. They don't tax an LLC. The state of Florida, where I have another business located, it's the other way around. A corporation with an S Corp is probably the better way. Depending on which state you're in, again, you need to talk to an accountant and figure that out. It is not a blanket answer. Nobody from YouTube, again, all these different shows, the different Facebook groups and so forth, nobody can tell you that with a definitive answer. And radio shows. I know there are, satellite radio trucking hosts that bring people on and they talk about it. Again, unless they know your specific circumstances and have read your business plan, they can't tell you what the best choice is. So, again, that needs to be researched. Talk to an attorney, talk to an accountant. Once you have your business plan, you know the direction you want to go. You have your entity set up, whatever it is, sole proprietor, LLC, so forth. Next is to apply for your authority, if that's what your business plan dictates that you do. If you are going the direction of getting your authority, that's the next step, is to apply. To apply, you simply go, again, this checklist is on the Trucking with Authority Facebook group. It's under the file section, no cost. The link is there. The link still takes you to the right place. FMCSA has updated their websites, but it's all redirected still to the same location. And you file the MCS 150 and OP1 with FMCSA. There are some pretty basic checklists in there on what your business plan says that you will do. You will likely haul property, not your private goods, unless you're a manufacturer and you're actually making something, or you're buying and selling something and you own the product. You'll probably be for hire. You might do some exempt type products if you're doing things like agricultural, whether it's nursery stock or raw farm type supplies. Basic checklist there, how many trucks you have, and sort of a profile of what you do. Do you haul hazmat? Yes or no? What types of hazmat? How many miles will you drive? And so forth. Pretty basic. Most people can get this without any other help. I tell people all the time, you should look at this and try to at least fumble through it yourself, even if you do want to hire somebody to do it. But there are companies that charge thousands of dollars to set up your business, and they go through this checklist, and I could go through it, and I've done this in front of people live. I think I've done a recorded show on the stream here, but I know I've done it in an event in front of people live, and I got somebody's authority set up in about 5 minutes. They had their MC number, DOT number live in front of people just that fast. So it's not complicated, and I don't want to be rude about this, but if you can't figure out this application, you need to go back and do some more research on your business plan and decide if getting your authority is right for you. Because once you get your authority, you will be faced with contracts every day. You will be setting up with various companies with extremely high risk levels, far higher than this little application will ever cost you. And if you can't handle filling out these basic forms and contracts, you need to probably go back and to step one and do more research on that. It's a very simple process, but people do mess it up. Okay, so if you want to just be sure and you want to hire somebody, that's fine, but understand the process so that they don't rake you over the coals. I see people all the time. I've had people, I hire owner-operators, and I tell everybody I bring in, look, if you want to come work for me, that's great. If you want to get your authority someday, that's great. I'll help you fill out the forms. But because they're too shy to tell me they're getting ready to move on or so forth, they hire some company to do it. And some of the companies that they've hired, I have literally had people stopped at Kentucky way stations because these people didn't tell them they needed the KYU permit. We'll get to that in a minute. They didn't tell them that they needed to register certain things. They didn't tell them that they needed to have the name on the truck a certain way. Simple things. And they pay them thousands of dollars. And I do this stuff for you for free. Okay? I have this checklist for you. It's simple. All right, so you apply. Used to be that there was 2 things that you had to apply for. Depending on how you go through the website, you'll still have options. You'll either be a common carrier or a contract carrier. In recent years, FMCSA has done away with the distinction between those two. But to explain, a common carrier is basically somebody that's working off of load boards, that's working off of, I should say, a tariff or rules circular. You should have that published. Prior to deregulation in 1981, it was a law that every carrier had their rates and rules and so forth published. And a common carrier would work off of those rates. And now, almost everybody is a contract carrier. And here's why. You're working off load boards direct with brokers who are signing contracts with you. They are contracting you. They're making you sign a broker carrier agreement, which is a contract. They're making you sign a rate confirmation, which is an addendum to that contract. And if you work with direct shippers, obviously, you're going to be contracted under them as well. So most people fall under the contract carrier option. But again, since deregulation, almost everybody kind of works the same way now. FMCSA has done away with that distinction between the two. That being said, your application should not ask you, but if you happen to fall into the old application somehow on the website, which I've seen it happen a couple times, it says that to have common, or for each authority that you check is $300. Because FMCSA has done away with the distinction, you can check common and contract both, and it's still only $300 for the application. Even though it's 2 separate types of authority, technically, kind of, sort of, they don't distinguish, so they still only charge you the $300 total for that. So go ahead and check both of those. Step 4. So we've got business plan, business entity, and apply with FMCSA. Step 4 is designate a process agent. What is process agents? The BOC3, you'll see this just kind of called the BOC3. You need to file a BOC3. What is that? Process agents. You're doing interstate business. You're based somewhere. So whatever state you're in, you're now doing business with interstate commerce across the country, crossing state lines. So FMCSA requires you to have an agent in each state. You have to actually have a person in each state that is designated to accept paperwork on your behalf, a process agent. So you work in your home state of, for example, Tennessee. You drive into Kentucky and you have some fatality collision up there. You go home to Tennessee. You have somebody in the state of Kentucky. When the state police show up to serve papers for you or what have you, you have somebody there to accept that on your behalf, because they aren't going to go to your home state of wherever, especially if it's California and you're in Virginia and so forth. You have somebody in that state because that's where the lawsuit will probably be. You have to have that set up. So that's the BOC3. That is relatively cheap. You could literally have somebody of your own in each state. That would be time and cost prohibitive, probably. But there are companies out there that can do that for you at little to no cost, $20, $30. You can just Google some places. If you are a member of OOIDA, say what you want about them, but if you are a member of OOIDA, they will do this for you at no cost. So if it costs you $35, $45 from one of these other companies, maybe it's worth it to just go ahead and join OOIDA, and they will do this for you at no cost, and then you have some other benefits from them, such as discount programs and so forth. But again, Google it, www.fmcsaprocessagent.com /category and so forth. And again, that is on my checklist, and there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of process agent companies that are listed there. So that's step 4. Step 5. Now let me talk about the timeline a little bit. The day you apply to the day your authority goes active is typically about 21 days. At least you got to give them a little bit of leeway over this COVID stuff, because let's not talk about that. So typically it's 21 days. Most of this is automated, so they're still able to crank these out in about 21 days as long as there aren't any issues. You don't want to insure your truck or anything until the application process is finished. So when you file the application on day 1, there's a mandatory 10-day waiting period, 10 days. They can't do anything for at least 10 days. So in that 10 days, there is no reason for you to spend, again, what could potentially be $40,000 or $50,000 a year. You break that down, if it's $50,000 a year, it's nearly $1,000 per week. So there's no reason to spend $1,000 per week when they, right off the bat, for the first 3 weeks, they won't do anything. 10 days, they can't even look at your paperwork because there is a protest period. I could say, no, that person, I could go on FMCSA's site, no, that person, for whatever reason, is not qualified to be a motor carrier, and they will review that. Rarely ever happens. Might happen if one of the mega fleet owners tried to start a new trucking company or something like that, or you have some shady person that's brought on multiple lawsuits and the lawyers might file something. But for most of us, that'll never be an issue. But it's still a rule that the first 10 days, nothing happens, there's a protest period. So after 10 days, FMCSA will start to process paperwork, take a look at it. Still takes about another week before anything starts moving. So do not rush paying for insurance. Bind your insurance on about 17, 18 days in. That includes weekends. Okay, so 17 and 18 days, go ahead and pay for and bind your insurance. Your insurance company will then file the BMC 91. Okay, the insurance company does that. They will bind your insurance. They will send FMCSA the correct forms. If you go through a reputable insurance company, you don't have to explain this to them. They will just do it for you. On day 21, I have seen a handful on day 20, but almost like clockwork on day 21, you will be active. So let's talk about the timeline again. Day 1, you apply. You get your USDOT number. You get your MC number, but they are not active. Anytime in the first couple weeks, go ahead and file your BOC3 process agents form. That doesn't really cost you anything, and it's a once and done. You should never have to deal with that again. Insurance, wait till about 17, 18 days in. Talk to your insurance agent about timing for that. Weekends and stuff. Make sure your paperwork gets filed on time. You can wait up to 90 days. Until you file your insurance, your authority will not go active. Your application will stay pending until your insurance, that BMC 91 from your insurance company, is filed with FMCSA. Then usually within about 48 hours, you will be active. When people say just get your authority, that's where it really stops. At that point, you are active. You have your authority. Technically. But there are a few other things that you need to do to kind of complete the process. Obviously, if you don't have your license plates and so forth, we can move on with that. The next step, though, is to file UCR. So what is UCR? Unified Carrier Registration. Unified Carrier Agreement basically allows all of the states to be distributed with all the information that you filed with FMCSA. It's $57, $59. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. It's not that expensive, but you have to go ahead and register with that. It's actually run by the state of Indiana. So you'll go to ucr.gov. And they've updated that website, ucr.in.gov or ucr.gov, and pay the UCR for as many trucks as you have. If you have one truck, again, it's less than $60. If you have multiple trucks, a small fleet, it goes up accordingly to several $1,000s if you have over a certain number of trucks. From that point, you really are about ready to start running. If you don't have your license plates in IFTA yet, that would be your next step. So if you had already had, many of you have a truck, you're leased to a carrier, maybe you have your own IFTA, your own IRP account set up. If you already have that, you're ready to run at this point. If you don't have that, that would be your next step. Apply for an IRP account in your state for an apportioned tag. What that allows you to do is cross state lines. Now, one mistake that people have made is they get an intra-state license plate. I had somebody that leased to me from Ohio. He actually had multiple trucks, and he leased all of his trucks on to me. But he said, don't worry about it, I have license plates. Well, he sent me the registration. After he'd already gone and got them, he sent me his registrations, and they were intra-state license plates only within the state of Ohio. So I had to call him and explain to him. Unfortunately, the state would not refund his money, and they wouldn't transfer it to anything else. He had no credit there. So he ended up basically having to pay double for multiple trucks. Most states, the cost there is about $1,600, give or take. Some states higher, some states lower. But it goes on off of an estimated mileage for the first couple of years. Works out to be about $1,600 a year wherever you're at. Another note there. When you apply for an IRP tag, some states allow you to do that in the county you live in, but most states, you must go to an authorized tag office. Some places, like the state of Florida, there's only 3 in the state. Actually, there's 3 in the state. There's one in Avon Park, one in St. Petersburg, and one all the way up in Tallahassee. Tallahassee being the state capital office, main government headquarters. I heard there might be opening one up. I say that for this. Florida is a really, really big state. So if somebody lived all the way down in Miami and they need to set up an IRP account, they may have to literally drive all the way to Tallahassee to get that done. You can, of course, do all this stuff by mail, but that takes a long time. So if we do it by mail, and again, with COVID, that might be your only option. Right now, license plates are one of the biggest hurdles that people are trying to overcome, getting the license plates timely. There are people that are waiting months to get their license plates, to set up their IRP account for the first time. Some states are more efficient than others. There are these third-party offices. There are tag agencies and so forth that can potentially help you get this. They even have tags right on their desk, and they just assign it to you, so it's a lot faster. Some states will provide a temporary tag. Some states will not. Some states you actually have to have the metal tag before you can run. So you have to check with your IRP office for that. IFTA is another one. Now, IFTA is a tax. It is separate from the IRP. Sometimes people get that confused. It is a separate program. You may or may not be able to get it at the same location that you get your tag. Again, in Florida, where I was originally based, you could get your tags at those third-party offices. But IFTA and IFTA stickers and permits and renewals and so forth had to go through the Tallahassee office. You had to go to the state capitol. Made it very, very difficult. Where I'm at now in Tennessee, it's kind of the same way. Everything has to go through that. Another point, with COVID-19, a lot of these offices are on reduced hours or not working from the office at all, or not allowing in-person visits at all. So you have to do it either online or by mail, which is a time-consuming process. For the most part, you cannot do this until your authority is active, unless you are leased to another carrier, and you can use their DOT number for the safety to get set up. So if you are leased to a carrier and you're thinking about doing this, you might look at getting your license plates first. You can, if you're leased to a carrier, you are allowed to run your own license plate, run your own IFTA accounts. And if you want to move on your own, it might be a good option to go ahead and get those set up first and then apply for your authority and make that move. It's up to you how you want to go about it. All right. And again, next step. This is something that a lot of people... My computer wants to restart for updates. Can't let that happen. Okay. Next step, number 9. Properly apply lettering and identification to your truck. Your truck is required to have your company name exactly as it is written on your MCS 150, exactly how it is filed with FMCSA. So if, for example, my company, when I first filed, I was incorporated out of Florida. So I filed it with FMCSA as Patriot Star Incorporated, and I wrote out the entire word incorporated. So if you ever see my very first truck 101, it says Patriot Star Incorporated, the whole word. When I started adding trucks on, I realized that that was going to be a problem, because when you go to get vinyl cut, they charge by time and letters and all that stuff. So I changed it, and now it is just, it's Patriot Star Incorporated, or LLC now, actually, I converted, to DBA Patriot Star. So now my trucks only say Patriot Star, but I had to file it and change my name with FMCSA to be able to do that. I see it all the time. People will abbreviate or change the lettering or typing or what have you on the lettering for their truck, and there is a ticket for that. You can get pulled over and get a ticket for that. If you get an inspection, that is a citable violation. So exactly as it is on your truck. So going back again to your business plan and doing the research and picking that business entity, when you file with FMCSA, make sure that you file properly. So if you want to do a DBA, you need to do that the way you want it to appear on the truck. And it could be a corporation or LLC with a DBA below that, but however that is worded needs to be exactly. Punctuation and all. So if you have Inc. period, it should say Inc. period on the vehicle. Okay, so everything should be exact, because that's the regulation. Now, will you get a citation if it doesn't say, whatever, Patriot Star Inc. period? They're probably not going to be that picky, but they might do it if it doesn't have that incorporated word and completely spelled out. If I put just Patriot Star Inc., that's a ticket. I literally had to spell out the entire word incorporated. So keep that in mind when you register and when you're picking your entity. Next step is create a driver's file. This is probably the most important part. This is the one thing that everything we've talked about so up to this point is kind of a once and done, or you won't do it very often. A driver's file, anytime you have a driver coming or going, there is a lot to do with that. I can help with that. I have software to help with that. I can arrange doing that for you. But you have to do things that seemingly are stupid, such as you have to do an employment history background check, even if you are the driver. So you need to do a background check on yourself. Will you be penalized if you don't? Probably not. It might be a little slap on the wrist and say, you probably should have done this. But you will get a lot of attaboys if you do it all, if you do everything to the T. Because if all of this little stuff is done, they won't look any deeper. All right? So have a driver's file, background check. Obviously, the MVR needs to be on file. Now you should pull a PSP, which is not required, but it's a good idea. We have some other resources to pull some other information. Any information from your insurance company and so forth. The most important thing in your driver file is probably the MVR. That is required. That is not optional. So if you can get your MVR, sometimes your insurance company can help you do that, or there are online sites. I have a way to pull MVRs. Contact your home state if you are the only driver. If you have other drivers under you, be sure to do a complete driver file, which you also have to have the medical card on file and so forth. And that creating a driver file is a whole show on its own, so I don't want to get too far into that. Next step, enroll in a DOT-approved drug consortium and take a DOT-approved pre-employment drug test. I know you don't do drugs. You are starting a new job. I know it's your company. I know you are starting a new business. You're not really changing anything. You're just getting started in a new direction. But FMCSA recognizes a new authority as a brand new entity, a brand new company. Even if you've been working for yourself for years, you start a new authority, you have to take a pre-employment drug test for yourself. And do not haul a load until you have the results from that test back. The results must be in your hand, not just the form that says you took it, and called a controlled custody form. That controlled custody form also needs to go in your driver files, slightly separated in the medical. We'll talk about that another time. The controlled custody form is proof that you took the test, but until you get the results that say negative, you should not drive and pull any loads. You shouldn't even drive the truck around on a public road. You shouldn't do anything with it as long as it's got your name on the door. Okay, so be sure to get that drug test done. That's it. Really, that's it. It's not that complicated. That is 11 steps. Now, I did tell you in the beginning that I had somebody call me because they worked with one of these other companies that did not tell them that they needed a special permit to drive in special states. If you are going to drive in those special states, we'll continue on. If you're not driving in those states, we can end there. And those states are Kentucky, New York, New Mexico, and Oregon. Okay? If you're doing interstate work and you're driving in those states, there is more to do. So in the state of New York, you have to get a New York heavy use tax permit. You have to go through their website called OSCAR, the one-stop credentialing online resource or something like that. You go through the New York OSCAR website. You'll register to get a business entity account. You'll set that up and you'll register your truck for the heavy use tax in the state of New York. State of Kentucky, you need to set up a KYU number, a KYU account. And then you need to add your truck to that account. The state of New Mexico. New Mexico is a weight distance tax permit. and then the state of Oregon. Now, Oregon is a little different. I'm going to come back to that, but you need to register also in the state of Oregon. So, cost in New York, they were sued by OOIDA, and OOIDA won. They used to charge somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 to set all this up. They did away with that. Now it's $1.50 to get the little yellow sticker. After next year, you'll actually get a different color sticker because those stickers are good for 3 years. Not 3 years from the day you get them, but a window of 3 years. And I believe this is the last year for that yellow sticker. Next year, 2022, I believe it'll change to another color. So you'll get that New York heavy use tax permit, and actually the sticker itself is the permit. It's $1.50 to get that sticker. Kentucky, I believe, is $19 or $29. It's been a little while since I've done one of those to register and get set up for the state of Kentucky. And then Kentucky is relatively easy. It's a once and done. You don't have to get permits. You don't have to really renew it every year. You don't have to do anything like that. But you do have to file quarterly. New Mexico, it's $10 now. They've upped it. It's not that expensive, but you do, again, have to file quarterly for miles driven. Now, the state of Oregon is completely different. State of Oregon has a couple different programs that you can get under. You can file a bond. So you could contact your insurance company and say, hey, I need to file a bond. It's a couple $1,000s per year for one truck. They hold the bond for 1 year. You have to file your tax return with the state of Oregon for miles you drive every single month. As long as you do that on time for every single month, you'll get your $2,000 back, or you don't have to renew that bond policy for the following year. After that, you can go to a quarterly filing. So every quarter instead of every month. Now, all of these states have temporary options. So if you're only going to drive in these maybe once or twice throughout the year, you can pull a temporary trip permit for each one of these states. It's a little more expensive, but it's a little less headache because you don't have to do these monthly or quarterly filings. And again, New York, Kentucky, New Mexico, you do have to file quarterly. I do it when I do my IFTA. So you'll already pull the miles that you drive in every state. You'll go to each one of those websites individually, and you'll file and file with them the number of miles driven. New York, I believe, is 6 cents a mile. Kentucky is 4 cents a mile, and I think I'm screwing these up. And it's 4 cents a mile in New Mexico. I need to look at my chart again to verify that, but it's roughly that. State of Oregon, different ballgame. 21 point something, almost 22 cents per mile for every mile you drive in the state. That's why in the beginning they want monthly reporting, because if you drive a lot in that state, it is big bills. And they know that if you drive several thousand miles in the state of Oregon and you wait till the end of the quarter, you will owe thousands of dollars to the state. And if you don't have it, they won't get it. So they break it down and they want you to file monthly. So you can get a trip permit up to 5 per year, potentially 15 per year, depending on your situation. Once you get beyond that, you are mandated to get the permanent account. But if you only go up there a couple of times a year, you can get it. You pay the tax. You have to give them your route in and out all the way until you leave the state. I will recommend that, let's say you're delivering in a certain city, have your next load booked so you know the direction you're going next, because you don't want to get there and then have to pull another permit, because you only have a certain number per year until you have to get that first, the permanent account. So if you can do your in and out trip all on one, that's the better option. Again, though, if you are not driving in any of those states, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. So if you're only going to run, the I-10 corridor between Florida and Texas, and you're never going to New Mexico, you're never going to Kentucky or so forth, you don't have to worry about those. If you are going into those states, you have to register. They will pull you over. They will give you a ticket. They will impound your truck and wait for you to register or pay this tax. I know this because it was in Kentucky at a weigh station. Somebody called me, had one of these other companies set them up. They didn't know anything about the KYU number, and they were basically impounded until they figured this out. So, all right, I am going to... Let's see if I can pull some of these up. I'm going to go to YouTube or Facebook first. Oh, I've got a phone call. Give me just midnight. I stopped paying attention. I got somebody with their hand raised over here. Hopefully I can hear them. Let's see. From the 205 area code. 205 area code. Are you with us?
Hello?
Yes.
I'm here. Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me turn you up a little bit.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey, this is Sharon Lambert.
Hey, Sharon, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm so happy that you're doing this this one here. This one is a popular topic. Now there are some things that have been asked of me over and over again, and it's two things. A lot of people say I have my authority, but it's not active. Meaning they went to the FMCSA website, paid $300, got MC and DOT numbers, and stopped. And
Right.
but they and please clarify that because it comes up a lot.
Okay, and they will say a couple of things. A lot of times I'll hear them say, I've got my numbers, I'm going to lease to a carrier and let it age, right? And that
That was number two.
yeah, which is kind of the same thing.
Okay,
It's
go
like
ahead.
I've got my numbers, I applied, I've got it, I've got everything, but it's not active. I'm just going to let it age. Unless it's active, it's not aging. So when you go to apply, day one, you will apply and they will give you your DOT and MC number almost immediately. I think the MC number, if it's not right away, it'll be the next day. But almost immediately, you will get your DOT and MC number. That's one of the hooks, because if you flick through truck paper, you go to the back and you find, there's dozens of ads of all these companies that they will do this for you. And their little sales pitch is instantly get your numbers. We will instantly have your DOT number. And I remember when I was doing this, and I thought, well, that's great because then I don't have to wait. But that doesn't mean anything. You will instantly get your number even if you apply yourself. They will give you the DOT and MC number, but it's not active. And unless it's active, it doesn't do you any good. So you have to activate it. And to activate it, you have to do the BOC3 and you have to do the insurance. You have to. Those two are required. You don't have to do any of the other stuff. You don't have to get license plates. You don't have to register in any of the states or what was the other one? The UCR. You don't have to register for any of that right away, but you have to activate it. You have to pay the insurance. You have to get the BOC3. The insurance is the most expensive part. So on this concept of letting it age, it doesn't age. It doesn't do anything until it goes active. You have to pay the insurance, and if you pay the insurance, what's the point of being leased to somebody else? Now you're leased to somebody else and you're still paying out the nose for insurance. You might as well just go run under your own. It doesn't make any sense to lease to somebody else. You could do that, but your insurance company is not going to like it because if you're ever in an accident, now you've got two insurance companies because the carrier that you're leased to is required to also have you on their insurance, and there's going to be a conflict of interest there. So that's a tricky point. A lot of people don't understand it. As far as going back and just letting it age with a DOT number. Now, there is one kind of exception to that. To do intra-state work. So let's say you're only in the state of Texas. Texas is a really big state. There's a lot of intra-state carriers. Intra-state, you're practically an OTR driver in the state of Texas because you could be out for several days and never leave the state and just, even if it's a back and forth run, it's a 2-day drive across the state, 2-day drive back. So you could be out OTR, never leave the state, and just operate under a US DOT number. I've got a friend that lives out of Phoenix, Arizona, does that. He only works in the state of Arizona. He's operating a motor carrier, but only under a DOT number. He does not have an MC number. I helped somebody in the state of Florida get it set up not too long ago. He applied. He got a new DOT and MC number because he thought he had to. And then he called me and he said that his insurance rates were a lot higher than he expected. So we talked to his insurance company and said, no. He's been in business for years. He's just been doing intrastate work. So we called FMCSA. We got a DOT or an MC number assigned under his old DOT number. His old DOT number did have age on it. So you technically can age a DOT number, even though you'll still be a new entrant as an interstate carrier. And it will help you sometimes on your insurance rates.
Okay. And Kenny?
Yep, I'm still here.
That's the exception. That's the exception, though, not the rule, right?
It is the exception, but I do recommend, if this is on the business plan of anybody that's looking to get their authority someday, that they get their DOT number right away, because you don't really have to activate it. There is no activating a DOT number, but if you get that and you can show that you have insurance, you're through a carrier, you'll have your bobtail insurance and so forth. FMCSA doesn't regulate intra-state work. They only regulate the anything across the state lines. So they will still look at that. So it's not a bad idea to get a DOT number, but it's pointless to get an MC number. Going back to the time frame of that, from the day you apply, you have 90 days to do the BOC3 and file your BMC 91 with your insurance. So to bind your insurance and close that, and then you'll go active. You have 90 days to do that. If you don't do it within 90 days, and during that whole 90-day period, it will show your application is pending. If you don't do it within 90 days, they will suspend your application, okay? Meaning it's still there, but they've put it back in the folder and they're not looking at it anymore. You have 1 year from then. So you've got 90 days, then you have 1 year from the last day of that 90 days. So now you've got 15 total months. So 3 months up front, 90 days, plus 12 more months, so 15 months. Anytime in that next 12-month period, you can write to FMCSA, it's got to be a written request, and ask them to reinstate your application. They'll do that and it won't cost anything. So now you've got a full year beyond, well, really 15 months beyond when you actually apply. They'll reinstate the application, and then it goes back to pending status, and then you do the BOC3 and insurance. It won't cost anything extra. If you wait beyond that 15-month period, then you have to start over, and you should already have an MC and DOT number, which is always yours. It's an $84 fee to reapply. So you just reapply at that point.
Okay. Now, to clarify, when you said you stressed the importance of getting a DOT number first, it's pointless to get an MC unless you're ready to use it, ready to go on and get an operating authority. With all that you've said, to clarify, getting a DOT number is free.
Correct.
You don't have to go to the FMC website and pay $300 to get a DOT number, which that's different for MC, when you apply for the operating authority. But people are being charged, $100, $150 for somebody to go get them a DOT number.
Correct. And so
and that's free, and it's like to do.
It's free. It takes, like I said, I can do the full application, MC number and everything in 5 minutes. And I think somebody that doesn't even know what they're doing can fumble through that application in just a few minutes. The only difference, it's the same application, same starting point at least, is you will just not check that you're interstate for hire. And then that means you don't need an MC number. If you're only doing intra-state work, you just get a DOT number. So, and it doesn't cost anything. It's free, gets you in the system. There is no activating a DOT number. It's active, so to speak, from the day you get it. Matter of fact, for some people that have insurance and so forth up front, if they're only doing intra-state work, so if you apply, you get your DOT number on day one, you could start working on day one if it's only intra-state. The only thing you cannot do is cross state lines. So if you have your insurance active and so forth, you don't have to wait for your MC authority, your motor carrier authority, to go active with FMCSA, because all you need is the DOT number to do the intra-state part. So going back to my example of Texas, if you are running a business, you're doing intra-state work in Texas, you just need a DOT number for that. You can do that indefinitely on the DOT number. And if you just go in and apply and add an MC number, you keep doing business as usual until that MC number is active, and now you can cross state lines.
Right. Got you here. Let's talk about one more thing. I don't want to take over your show, man, but this is just a topic. It's such a hot topic, and it comes up so much, and I get these questions, so I figure I'd jump on your show since you got the listeners, and I'm going to refer this show to some of my people, too, and so I want it all. Listen, okay, with when you talked about the importance of a business plan, and you talked about the steps involved in applying for an authority, how about stressing the importance of getting that insurance quote first before you go to the FMCSA site and apply for the authority? Because some of these third-party people who charge people to do this for them. What I've seen a lot of is that they'll take their money, they'll charge them $700, $800, $1,000 to do it all for them, which includes the $300 for the FMCSA, and they'll go and fill out the paperwork. They'll take their money, fill out the paperwork, and then tell them they need insurance.
Yes.
Which then they find out at that point they've already paid their $300 to the FMCSA and paid somebody to fill a little simple form out that you outlined here. They paid all that money. Then they find out at that point they need to pay thousands of dollars for insurance.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's actually on my notes,
So,
and I glossed over that when I was going through my checklist here. But absolutely, before you apply, and that should be, business plan, and the next thing of that business plan should be, the research, and insurance costs should be a part of that. And you need to determine if the cost of insurance even makes it feasible to do this. You can call some insurance agents before you apply and at least get a ballpark. They can't give you an exact number until you're actually filed with FMCSA because they can't pull any of your records, but they can give you at least a ballpark. And if they give you a ballpark of, like Taylor said, $50,000, you might decide that it's not for you. What's the point of pursuing that? Maybe you need to get more experience. Maybe you need to wait for something to fall off your MVR. In some cases, maybe you need to move to a new state. So there's a lot of factors that play into that, and that can all be a part of the research done in the business plan long before you ever apply. And that's a very good point.
all right. Yeah. I had another one, but I know you may have other calls. So
No, these are good. This is
I
good
have to
stuff.
think about
What's
the other.
okay?
Yeah, yeah. I was listening to your responses here too, but yeah. I mean that business plan and the why you need it, the why you think you need an authority, because so many people are they're tossing that authority around, that number around. I mean that terminology around, and some people who don't even know what the definition of an authority is are saying they are being told they need the authority.
Yes.
So
And there are
the
people.
big thing, the why you.
I'm
Go
a
ahead.
carrier and a broker. And one thing that I'm running into a lot on our broker side is carriers that think they have their authority, but they're leased under another carrier. And it's basically a lot of double brokering things going on. And the carrier, a couple of them, I actually warehouse some stuff for one of my customers. Just I keep it in a storage trailer for them. And I had a truck come to my yard that I did all the background checks. I looked, I verified the insurance, I verified everything. When the truck showed up, the name on the truck was different than the name of the carrier that I had hired. So I dug a little deeper. The driver had a different insurance policy. When I called the carrier, they said, oh no, that driver is an owner-operator, he's leased to us. But he had his own authority. So I said, well, whose authority is it going under? Well, it's going under one, but they're going to broker it to another. I said, it doesn't work that way. I can give it directly to him, and if he gives me permission, I'll pay you, but I need to have his insurance information on file. That's the whole point of having the insurance. It's got to be filed correctly. Neither of these carriers actually knew the process, and I actually had to stop. The driver had the insurance. He had the premium insurance that he was paying as if he was a carrier, but he never had his insurance company file it, so he was not actually even active. He had insurance, but he was not active. If he would have got pulled over because the name on his door shows that he's not active, my load would have been impounded because he's not an active carrier. And neither the carrier that I hired nor the driver knew that that was a problem because somebody set them up and didn't tell them the process. So if you have your authority, and this kind of goes back to what you're talking about, a lot of people get their numbers to let them age or so forth, and it doesn't really work that way. You're either active or you're not. So you're either leased to a carrier or you're not. You don't have your authority and lease to a carrier. You don't have a carrier and lease on other carriers. You can lease on owner operators, but they have to be on your insurance. They have to be on, with your name on the door. You cannot legally lease another carrier. A broker can do that. And a lot of the things that get thrown around are some of the big fleets like Prime have their what they call the advanced fleet, and it's carriers pulling Prime trailers. But you have to understand that is not the carrier side of Prime doing that. Those loads are all brokered to those other carriers. And I think there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding of the flow of operations. Who's the customer? Who's responsible for the liability? Who covers the insurance and so forth? And there's a lot of people trying to work the system thinking that it'll work in their favor. And really, at the end of the day, if they get caught, the customer, the shipper and receiver are the ones that have to pay for it, or the broker that hires them that was essentially conned. So understanding the whole process and who should be holding the authority and all the liabilities involved, that's extremely important, and a lot of people don't understand it.
Yeah, more than a few. A lot of people are asking me the question of, why can't I just get my truck first and then go and start running? And these are things that I talk about, that you need to do this research and you need to know what you're doing first, and you need to understand what the market that you're in and all of this that you talked about. There is no way to game the system. When they say you need to get this authority or quote unquote authority and let it age while you run for somebody else under somebody else's authority, that right there is a conflict, because as you stated, if you get your authority, if you actually truly get an authority, you have to get insurance first, which costs thousands of dollars up front, and you have to maintain that insurance in order to keep that authority active. So you're paying thousands of dollars up front, and you're paying a premium every month. And if you're trying to age it for a year, you actually have an active authority, you're keeping it active. Why not be making money? The common thing is they say that a new authority won't get work. Brokers won't work with you if you got a new authority. And that's true. It's true that a lot of them won't, but it's true that a lot of them will too. As I state, a lot of times there are as many brokers out there that need you as you need them. New brokers. I'm a new broker, and I'm having a hard time getting carriers to pull my loads because I'm a new broker.
Right.
And so I would be more willing to take a chance on a new carrier
Right.
because I need them to
Correct.
pull
Yep.
my loads. There's lots of people in the circumstance that I'm in right now. So you won't be shut out of the market. This is relationship building time. If you're going to go through brokers at this point and not direct shippers.
And the market,
go ahead, Kenny.
when the market is tight, like it has been for the past several months, and we're in a little bit of a wintertime slump, which is normal, but even if you take that into consideration, the market right now is phenomenal. It is still a carrier's market, and it has been since the middle of the summer last year, since the things started opening up again and freight started moving again after the COVID-19 shutdowns. The market has been phenomenal. It is a carrier's market, and this is the time, if you're going to get your authority, work with them when the market is tight, because if they need you, like you just said, they're more likely and more willing to work with a new carrier. Versus 2016 and 17, I remember, there was a time where it was horrible. They didn't need any trucks. We had far too many trucks. Rates were bad, and it was definitely a broker's market. You couldn't negotiate decent rates anywhere because there were 100 trucks standing behind you waiting to take the next load. And in a market like that, you don't have a choice but to just, work with whoever you can find. But right now, you can negotiate some of that. There are people that need you more than others. So now is a good time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you think you're tricking the system by trying to get an authority and letting it age, these people need to know that when they call a broker to get a load, that broker can see the whole history of
Yep.
everything when
Yep.
it happened. Nobody's being fooled.
Yeah, absolutely. From the day you went active. And if you get your authority and you don't put insurance on it, you just wait for the numbers to age. The brokers will look at the day you went active, not from the day you applied. Your insurance company may look at the day you applied if you've been doing other business and so forth, but brokers look at the day you went active. In fact, to the point that if you lapse for even one day, so maybe your insurance expires on the 31st and you don't renew it until the 2nd or whatever, and it lapses for one day and your authority is pulled for that one day, brokers will look at you as a new entrant. Most of them will. There may be some that you're already working with and so forth, but they will look at you. And matter of fact, I was talking about the Common and Contract Authority. There was a carrier a couple of years ago that I helped, had only Common, wanted to add contracts, so added contract, and there were brokers that wouldn't work with them because they added authority, and it showed a new authority, new entrant to that, even though their authority had been active the entire time, but that contract authority was new, which is why I tell people now, get both of them right from day one. But they will look at the days that you, even if it's one day, you'll have to wait, for these brokers that have the 90-day, 6-month, or year different time frames before they'll work with you. You let it lapse for one day and that clock starts over.
Absolutely. I was going to make the point about the insurance lapsing too. I'm glad you said that. I got two more things, and they just came up, and then I'm gonna stop hogging your show.
Okay.
But everything that you said previously, the steps to take, especially the DQ, the driver qualification file and the vehicle maintenance file and the pre-employment drug screens and the consortium and all of that, these things need to be paid very close attention to when you get in the authority and after, because there's that new entrant audit coming up. As soon
Correct.
as you get this authority running, now the DOT is going to be watching you, and in about 8 months, which is average what I see for everybody, including myself, when I got my carrier authority, they're going to be checking you out and making sure that you've done this. So that's not the end of the road when you get the authority and start running. You're going to have an audit coming up.
Correct.
And so you need to be keeping those good records all along. That's one.
And record keeping is a whole show of itself. We can get into record keeping, and I touched on it, but you brought up some other things. You need the driver qualification file. The one thing, this initial safety audit, a lot of this stuff is, they might give you a little slap on the wrist and they want you to fix it. The one thing that they will absolutely put you out of business for on the very first time they find out about it is that drug test. If you don't do the pre-employment drug test and you're not part of the random drug test consortium, if you're not on one of those, you will be shut down immediately. Everything else is kind of a slap on the wrist, and they want you to fix it. But you need to have that in place. You need to have a driver file in place, driver qualification file. You mentioned the motor vehicle, the list of equipment. So your trucks, your trailers, right? Your vehicle maintenance list, accident list. Even if you don't have any accidents, you still should have a blank sheet of paper with a heading on the top that says accidents, right? So you still need to show that you have all of these things in place.
Hours of service, logs.
Logs and hours of service are a big one. And what they will do is they will come in and they can audit any of the past 6 months. And what they'll typically do is say, what was the busiest of the past 6 months? I want to see that month. And you got to pull all your logs, all your toll receipts, all your fuel receipts, any paperwork that corresponds to the loads that you did. They want to see everything. All of that is an open book. Used to be, pre-COVID, they would walk into your office and they would open up your file cabinet drawers and thumb through it themselves. But now, they're doing most of it online. They still did a lot of them because there's so many different carriers getting started, and they're so swamped that they're doing most of them online. That being said, they still have the option of literally coming to your office. And if you're ever, and this is for the initial safety, if you're ever audited beyond the initial safety, a random audit or something, or if there's an accident and you're flagged for an audit, they will come because they want to see everything. They want to see your operations. They want to see every detail of how your business works, including all your files and record keeping. So it's important that you have all of that stuff.
Right. And that makes a difference on how deep they go too. In my first audit, they asked me randomly, they wanted to know, they wanted to see my fuel record. And I produced some fuel bills. And they took a random transaction, just random, off a fuel bill, and they went and looked at my logs to see if on that day, at that time, I was on duty when I was fueling.
Yep.
Now, it just happened, they found 5 random transactions. They went to my logs. They saw I was properly logged, and they didn't do much else because my stuff was just the way it should have been. But if one of those transactions doesn't match or something is not consistent, they will dig deeper.
Absolutely.
So,
if you give them a reason to look, they will continue to look, for sure.
Yeah, everything else was glossed over after they verified those transactions. It was like, oh, you got this, okay, you're good. But that can make the difference. So your record keeping makes a big difference.
Definitely.
I know your show is about getting the authority, so I don't want to veer too far off. The last thing I want to say is you mentioned about paying these companies to do this and how simple the application is. I know you have other steps beyond the application, but everything really is just no more than anybody's ever done up until this point to apply for a job
Yep.
or to apply for a credit card or to apply for anything that you've got to fill out, a bank account, anything that you have to fill out an application for. It's really no more difficult. It's just process going through the processes.
Definitely.
Now, beware of, I'm a big advocate of doing it yourself. I've written it out on my website. You probably have more details because you've got links, but I do have the process outlined on my website. But be careful about these third-party people, because if you don't know better, they will take you to the cleaners. You yourself, Kenny, you did a video on filing a UCR. And the UCR itself, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything other than the $60 or $70 that you have to pay for the UCR itself. But there are companies out here that will send you emails and say, hey, you need to do this UCR and you're going to be in trouble. You lose your whole authority if you don't file it. Let us do it because you're going to mess it up. And they'll charge you $200 to do it.
Yep, and they will send you those letters even. They'll send those letters even if you've already done it.
Yeah.
You won't even be expired or you don't need it, and they'll still send you those letters and convince you. Some of them, and there have been lawsuits about this, some of them look like they are official from the government. And I can tell you right off the bat, nobody from FMCSA or any state DOT or anybody else is going to call you, at least not first. If they're going to call you, they will send you an email or letter to let them know or let you know that to expect a phone call. Nobody will call you, so don't fall for anybody that calls you after this. I promise you, the second you do your application, you hit that submit button. That very second you hit it, your phone will start ringing. And 9 times out of 10, it's this woman from California. I almost recognize her voice. I think she's given me a different name every single time she's called, and she represents herself as calling from some FMCSA, DOT, something, and insists that we have to hire her because it's required. And it's the same woman every single time, and I always, tell her who I am, and she hangs up on me, right? But every single time, and then after that, it's just call after call after call from everybody that wants to file your BOC3, from insurance companies, from factoring companies, from everybody you can think of, soliciting stuff, and none of it is required. No matter what they tell you, none of it is required. And the application, I am all for everybody doing it themselves, but I understand it is important. And if you want a third party to do it for you, I understand if that's what you opt to do. However, like I said in the beginning, you should go through it yourself and learn the process so that they don't rake you over the coals and tell you need all these other things that you don't need, or that they neglect to tell you some of the things that you do need, like the KYU number and things like that. Make sure you know the whole process through and through. Then you can hire them to do it, to fill out the actual paperwork, and that gets you off the hook, and they've probably done it at least a few times, and they'll push the right buttons. But other than that, there's no reason to really pay anybody else to do this.
Absolutely, exactly. And if you think, I'm with you. Some people say that their time is worth more than their money.
Right.
And I'm not going to knock them. I'm not going to knock them for that. But don't just take somebody at face value that they're a quote unquote professional just because they represent themselves as such. You do need to do a little research to know what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't want to go, at least know that this is what I'm supposed to be getting from this company. Don't just throw your money at them and trust that they're doing it correctly, because you're going to pay the price in the end.
Definitely. Yep. Or it'll be done wrong. It'll be done incorrectly, and you've paid them to do it. Now you've got to pay somebody else to fix it. And if you don't know what you're paying for, don't just take it at their word, because like you said, we were both saying there are people just with their hands out a lot. This is of all the different businesses that I have now or have had in the past, the trucking business has the most scams, crooks, thieves of anybody, anywhere that I've ever met. Everybody is trying to take advantage of you some kind of way, whether it's through things like this, applications, or people scamming you at shops, or, everything you can think of, double brokering scheme, everything you can think of. There are so many schemes and so forth, so much so that it's almost just how the industry is. It's almost just the industry standard to expect that. And it's all mostly illegal and wrong, or they're just crooks, and it's just not needed. So knowing that up front before you get in can really help you avoid some of the scam operations out there. And that's really what I did this show for tonight.
Absolutely. Well, I say it was a great show, and I think I'm done. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Sharon. We will put you back on hold. Thanks for calling in.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So I think that pretty much wraps up the checklist here. Let me get some of these questions and comments from the live streams here. Oh, this is a good one. Where does checking a new drug clearinghouse, and I completely forgot to mention that. The drug clearinghouse and a new driver come into the DQF process. The new drug clearinghouse is part of the DQF process before the driver starts. You have to request a full inquiry on the driver. The driver will get an email that they have to register with the system and give you permission to have it. And then once you have that, that goes in their driver file. But yes, the DQF process requires the new clearinghouse form be done first. That's not that difficult to get done. If you have drivers, this is something else that's important to touch on. If you have drivers that you've had for at least a year, you have to pull a clearinghouse form on them as well. They don't have to register for it, but they need to, you do a limited query on them. So a full query, they have to register, they have to give you permission and so forth. But if you have a driver that has been with you at least a year, and within 12-month period, every year, you have to pull a new limited query. If anything comes back as incorrect, or you see an issue on their limited query, then you have to apply for a full query. So for us, it's actually the same cost. We typically just pull a full query for everybody, and that way it covers all the bases, and the driver has to give authorization to do that. But definitely, you have to do the driver drug clearinghouse query as well. We usually do that in the same process of when we send them to get their drug test. We send them for the drug test, and we pull the query at the same time. We usually get the results from both back about the same time. So Ron Hopkins from Facebook says, this is for the Oregon permit. We bought a $2,000 bond for Oregon for $105 for a year after the year of filing monthly on time, or waive the bond requirement. So if you contact your insurance company, and a lot of people do this, it's relatively inexpensive per truck. It's roughly $2,000 for the first truck, and then it's tiered from there. If you have multiple trucks, you'll have to pay multiple for the bond. But it's good to do that up front. If you have a plan on growing a fleet, get that out of the way so you don't have to put up, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 for the trucks just to be able to run there once you get there. Once you get past that first year, you don't have to have that bond in place anymore. You can pay the insurance company to put a bond up for you, or you can just take $2,000 cash and send it to them, and at the end of the year, they'll send that $2,000 back to you. That's what we did. See, the first year insurance costs would be high, which may discourage you to start the authority. The state where you are based out of is very important. Correct. The state where you are based out of is very important. That being said, you have to have a physical address of where you're starting. So you can't just start the business in any state and hope to get your authority started from there unless you are physically able to have a location there. And typically, like a UPS store or something like that doesn't cut it. You need to have a physical address. Let's see, the first 3 months would be a bit tough to get loads, but eventually we'll pick up. I covered that with Sharon. It will be, but it will you could definitely stay busy in the first 3 months. Definitely busier on your, and probably more profitable under your own authority than if you were trying to lease to a carrier and maintain your own authority. The cost wouldn't make sense. Can you talk about the exemption form that can save taxes on repair? Certain states, and this is not across the board. Devin Eccleston? Yeah, Devin from Facebook says, can you talk about the exemption form that can save taxes for repair? A few states allow tax-free for interstate operations. Some states do not. So there is not a blanket form for everybody. For example, Florida does not. The state of Georgia does. So sometimes when we have repairs done or we buy tires, things like that, anything big, sometimes we'll do it on our way out of Florida on the way to Georgia. So it depends on the state and depends on the situation. Some small carriers suspended their authorities due to COVID to suspend the insurance for a couple of months only to find out they reset their birthday on their authority. That's correct. It was a mistake. I was telling people not to do that. There was a way to kind of put your insurance on hold where your insurance company would just kind of park your truck. You'd have like storage insurance, but you didn't have to cancel your policy. And people didn't want to do that, but that is what happened to a lot. They basically lost their authority, had to reapply and start over. Let's see. The information you put out was instrumental in us getting our authority. We didn't have any issues that were really unexpected. We've been complimented many times on how squared away we are. You definitely deserve some credit, so thanks for that. Well, thank you, Ron. The company that we do the drug test for our owner-operators, it's not registered on the clearinghouse. Is that an issue? The drug consortium, the consortium is not going to be registered on the clearinghouse. Let's see, I'm trying to make sense of your question here. The clearinghouse and the drug testing program are two separate issues. So it wouldn't be registered on there. There are certain criteria to meet the DOT requirements, and you could look that up, and maybe I'll post some of that. But there is no list that I'm aware of, there is no list of compliant drug test companies. Where it will come into play is if they are not compliant and you're audited, they will look closer at them and then you will find out. It is your job as the carrier to make sure that they are compliant. So most of them, it's not real complicated. Most of them meet the requirements because that's what they're in business to do. All right, so that was off of Facebook. Let's see. Let me find the YouTube stream here. All right, the best app and load board for team drivers and for new authority. The best app and load board for team drivers and for new authority. That's a whole other show. I am not a fan of any of the app-based brokers. There are a lot of problems with that. There are some, I got into a bit of a discussion with, I guess it wasn't much of a back and forth because he didn't seem to care, but one of these YouTubers that uses these app-based brokers almost exclusively. And a couple weeks ago when things were a little slow, he sat for 4 or 5 days. Couldn't find anything on those apps. And all of our trucks were running. We were doing decent rates. We were busy. And when I look at all the different problems, he's got a YouTube channel. So he shows everything he does. And every single problem that he has while he's under a load, every single one would be fixed if he would just pick up the phone and call somebody. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to go through these apps. I'm not a fan of the apps. I think there is no negotiation with an app. There is haggling and bidding, like a lowest bidder wins auction style. I'm not a fan of that. You know, if they, at the last second they need you, they'll take your high bid. But for the most part, most of those apps are bottom of the rung type rates. And there's no relationship building. There is no way to establish a relationship with a human. And the difference between a human relationship, an analog relationship, person to person, versus a relationship that's digital, which is all about numbers, is this. If you represent yourself and you build a relationship as a problem solver to a broker, that broker will appreciate it and give you opportunities before they give opportunities to somebody else, and potentially hold things for you. These app-based brokers, they use analytics, and it all comes down to, if you've delivered a load on time, you're the most qualified. That doesn't mean you're the best problem solver. That just means it worked out that time. There's no communication on details of the load, and there's a lot to negotiate. I'll do another show again on negotiation. There is a lot of things that you can negotiate. Times, weights, product, delivery appointments, delivery locations sometimes, routing, different, even the logistics side of it, of maybe I can put this load with this load or what, and there's all kinds of things that you can negotiate on. But if you just are bidding on a number with an app, that is like the lowest level of haggling, and I can't stand it. That's like the last thing you do in a true negotiation, is talk about money. And when it comes to those type of apps, it's only about money. Nothing else matters, and that's why you've got these guys will go to pick up these loads that they booked on an app. They sit there for 2 or 3 days. They don't get paid detention. They don't have any idea what's going on. They don't know if the appointment times are right. The guy I was just talking about posted a video earlier today. He showed up. He booked a load through an app, and he showed up, and the shipper didn't have the product ready. Well, why didn't he make a phone call, right? If you make a phone call, you would know these things up front. So those kinds of things, app and load boards. Now, for a load board, DAT, they have an app, but I highly recommend using the actual website version, not the app version, just because there's a lot more information there. So DAT, Trucker's Edge, or I prefer Power. But DAT or TruckStop, I'm actually talking to TruckStop now about maybe switching our fleet to them, because DAT is changing things. So DAT and TruckStop are both kind of the leaders in that space. They both have apps, but still I think the website versions are better. For teams, Amazon that's all app-based. There's really no other way around it with them. They're very finicky. I'm not a huge fan of Amazon, but they have a lot of team stuff, especially near the holidays. And they will work with new authorities, if that was your question. So that's kind of a tricky one. And all of the app-based brokers that I am aware of will work with new authorities. And the reason is they'll take anybody that can fog a mirror, because that's the type of loads that they have, which goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. And I think, so H. Davis 93 on YouTube says, unless you can build a relationship with 2 or 3 brokers that have dedicated freight and can keep you busy. And I think he was talking about getting your own. When I was in the beginning of the show, I think I scrolled all the way back. In the beginning of the show, I said, before you even apply, you should make some calls and try to get some direct freight. If you can build those relationships, call some brokers, tell them where you're at and what you're doing, and you might work with just a handful of brokers. I do recommend only working with a handful of brokers, not running wild, to where you're working with a different broker every single day. Because, again, going back to building relationships, if you're working with a different person every day, they're not going to remember who you are the next time you call them. If you work with the same person at least on a regular basis, maybe a couple times a month at least or something, it doesn't have to be a load direct with them every single day, but enough that they know who you are. Now you've got a relationship. And when the market turns, and it will, and the market is a little softer right now than it was back in the peak before Christmas, it's better than it usually is for this time of year, but it's still not the best that we've ever seen. This is when those relationships do pay off, especially if you're in a niche market. We have, we did a lot of pad wrap type stuff. And for a while, especially during COVID, we parked all of the pad wrap trailers. Just a few weeks ago, we put one of those guys back on the road, and we're reconnecting with some of those old agents and brokers that we worked with. And, the guy that is doing that he just pulled one of his first loads for an agent. And we actually have them calling us now because I guess they miss us. They want to know where our trailers are. So we're going to start getting back into that a little bit. But they call us because they know they can count on us. And we didn't work through an app. They know us. They know who we are and our drivers are. And that's important. I guess I went beyond some of the things. I already answered some of this. With the knowledge you know, what would you have changed on your business plan starting out? That is a good question. I'll come. What is the new phrase? I'll circle back to that. I'll just circle back on that. Yeah, I'll circle back. Do you still use Hadley and Leiden for your insurance? If you're out of Florida, Hadley and Leiden is great. We moved out of Florida, so they were the first year when we were in Tennessee. We stayed with them. We were able to find some other agents that had some other markets that were open to us in Tennessee, so we're not with them anymore. But if you are in the state of Florida or in the Southeast, they are phenomenal. Brad Allen is my guy. I don't get a referral or anything from that. Like I said, I'm not trying to sell anything, but he is the guy. And give them a call. They will explain everything you need. They can write pretty much in all 50 states, but their primary market is the Southeast. They are the biggest and oldest agency in Florida or in the Southeast. They've got a lot of experience. They will tell you what you need. The Florida insurance market is horrible, and them having the right connections can put you in a better spot. Taylor, that's right. I remember one of the reasons Taylor came on with us the way and when he did. He spent a month and a half trying to figure out the paperwork to get his own tag. The place didn't know where their stuff was. Everything was through mail. And I was able to get him a tag in one day through the state of Tennessee. Our account's already set up, and I was able to just apply everything and get it set up, and they sent us a temporary tag. So that's one of dealing with Tallahassee. Going back to H. Davis 93 and his Hadley and Leiden, if you're out of Florida, between that, insurance, and dealing with Tallahassee in the state of Florida, I've got nothing good to say about the way that Florida handles things in Tallahassee. I'm pretty happy that I'm between Florida and Tennessee. I'm happy with the coronavirus restrictions. But other than that, the way that they're very disorganized in there for the way they operate their tag office and everything. I can say that. And Marty said something in Colorado. I'm not sure what that was, but okay. Star Car Dave. How important is deciding what state to set up in? So for most people, I tell everyone set up in the home state that you live in. You have to have an address. When you're only one truck, one of the first thing the insurance company is going to look at is how come you're setting up somewhere else. They will question on how and why you live in one state and you have a driver's license in another. You can explain that. You can explain that by saying, well, I'm going to move there and so forth, but you actually have to have a physical address. I know Dave is going through some stuff right now, open up an address in another state. He's actually renting an actual physical office. He's going to establish his business there, his LLC, get his license plates, all that, and insurance from there when he's ready. Everything will be out of that state. It's important, but when you're audited, like Sharon was saying, when you are audited, they have the option of coming to your actual office and opening up your file drawers personally. All right, so you have to have a physical location where you keep your stuff, where you can meet them for an audit. I shouldn't tell you this, but technically, you could just have a file folder and show up and meet them at a Starbucks somewhere. They, like I said, they will never call you. They will always do everything by mail or email and so forth, set up appointment times and everything. They could, technically, they'd be within their legal rights. A state trooper, which is who usually oversees a lot of this stuff, could walk into your office one day and demand to be able to go through everything. That could happen. It's rare these days. It was even rare before COVID-19, even more so now that they don't want anybody in person to do anything. But definitely, you need to have a physical location where you can meet somebody. So a UPS box or something like that just won't cut it. And most of the time when you go to put that in, they will kick it back because they know it's just a UPS box. And they need a physical location. Marty says he drives about 18,000 miles in Oregon a year. Hawaii requires an interstate plate, yes or no? Actually, Hawaii has an if you, okay, this could go either way. Obviously, if you have a truck in Hawaii, it's only driving in the state of Hawaii. If you register it in Hawaii, it could have just a Hawaii tag on it. If you live on the mainland and you have a truck registered in another state that drives in Hawaii, then yes, it would need an interstate license plate as well. I think people need to research for 8 months, get your broker authority once you learn the trucking side. That can go either way. You don't have to have broker authority to get direct customers. That's another misconception. So you can get direct customers for a carrier. The reason you might need a broker authority would be if your carrier cannot handle that volume of freight, or if you don't have the trucks to do what you need to do. So, for example, let's say you are a reefer carrier, but every year, during produce season or something, your direct customer needs to move all of his equipment from his farm back to his warehouse or something like that. Well, now he needs flatbeds, but you're a reefer carrier. Well, if you were a broker, you could broker that out to somebody else, right? He could be a direct customer. You could do something else. So that gives you options. There's no reason to get the broker authority unless you want to hire other carriers to do work for you. Once you get your carrier authority, you're ensnared by the high costs and under the broker's control, but not if you are a broker. And I think that's alluding back to what I was just saying. You do not have to have a broker authority to get direct customers. You do not have to go through a broker if you have carrier authority. You do not need to be a broker. If you are a broker, most other brokers are still going to work directly to the carrier. They're not going to work through you that way. So it doesn't really make a difference on that side of it. When a broker figures out an owner-operator is a broker, it's in his best interest to book you loads at a decent price. Otherwise, you may take it to the shipper. Again, doesn't matter because you could go direct to the shipper as a carrier. You sign a contract with them. You could go direct to the shipper as a carrier. And when you sign that contract, it says no back solicitation. That would apply to any business or affiliation that you have. Even if, to the point that if you just gave all that information to a friend of yours and they went and did the back solicitation, you could still potentially be liable for that. That kind of stretches the ethics clause a little bit when you do something like that. So be careful with some of that. Shippers like the double insurance that comes with a broker and a carrier. Not necessarily. So with a broker's insurance, a lot of brokers don't even have insurance, which, again, there are these YouTube broker school guys that are teaching this stuff that are telling brokers not to get insurance, which is horrible advice. If anybody out there is a broker watching, you need to get insurance. It's important to have insurance as a broker to protect yourself. Most brokers, at a minimum, get a contingent liability policy. And what that means is you have to do all the checks and balances, make sure that when you hire a carrier, that carrier is properly insured for the load that you put on them. You have to do all that. That's required. Even if whether you have insurance or not, that's a requirement. That's what a broker's job is, to make sure that the carrier is qualified and insured and financially responsible. Remember, insurance requirements come from the FMCSA. A carrier is required to be insured for safety purposes so that they are financially able to cover any losses and cover any of that stuff for damages they might have or cause. It's a broker's job to make sure that all that is compliant. Now, if everything is compliant and that broker has contingent coverage, if and when there's an accident and there's lawsuits and everything involved, if the carrier's insurance for some reason doesn't cover something, the contingent policy for the broker covers the broker. Okay, covers where the carrier's insurance falls off. If the carrier's insurance doesn't pay because they don't have that level of coverage or so forth, the broker's contingent policy won't pay either because it's contingent upon the carrier having insurance. So some brokers can get a primary policy, but it's rare, especially for a small broker. So that's not necessarily a big selling point. It might be a selling point, but not a big selling point for direct shippers. Okay, after you study the trucking side, you'll know exactly the cost you need to stay in business and be able to steal shippers from other brokers easily. Yeah, but there's an ethics issue there. And now I think, okay, so we're going into some overtime here, but I'm going to entertain these for a minute. But I'm pretty sure now he's getting into to troll land here. But I'm going to entertain these because there is some conversation here. Brokers can survive comfortably on 1 to 2% of the load and pay owner-operators what they are worth, no less than $4.55 a mile. And he goes on to say owner-operators can really only drive 260 days and are limited to hours per day. All right. So 1 to 2% of the load. Your cost as a broker, we were just talking about insurance. You said that the broker should have insurance. Most of the time, the insurance is in that 2% range. I've seen it higher, but typically around 2%. So right there, your cost is at a minimum, just for the coverage that you claim to have, is going to be at least 2%. Then any other overhead you have. We have customers that we spent a big chunk of money. You know, we spent over a year. I had a full-time employee, and his job was to bring us that customer. You know, and so if I figure that I had to pay that employee plus expenses plus all the different things, you know, it cost me over $50,000 potentially to get my foot in with this one particular customer. I'm not going to recoup that on 1 or 2%. Even if you start looking at 10, 15%, sometimes it's hard to recoup those numbers. So putting a flat percentage rate on something, there's no way for carriers to understand what all went into developing the relationships and getting those loads. Some brokers invest a lot of money for infrastructure, especially 3PLs, 4PLs, where they may even have warehousing and forklift stuff set up. And there's more than just the shipping cost involved. There's the logistics of, especially, again, warehousing and so forth. And brokers arrange a lot of that. You also have to remember that, going back to what I was saying with Sharon, there are a lot of shady carriers. A lot. Once you become a broker, you'll realize that there are more shady carriers than there are shady brokers. Okay, I am a carrier first, and we broker a little bit. But the few trucks that we talk to, out of every 10 trucks we talk to, I bet half of them are either double brokered or they're a dispatch service that are representing somebody that's not part of the program. They don't have the insurance at all. I mean, I'm not saying wrong insurance, but they do not have any insurance. They're either out of business. They are complete, just not qualified companies, not active authority, whatever. At least half of them get weeded out from that. So 5 out of 10. And of the other 5, maybe 1 or 2 meet our qualifications. And so you hire 1 or 2, you go through all these checks. It takes us far longer than it should. But we have to make sure that we go through and check insurance. We have to call the insurance companies. We have to verify the drivers, check VIN numbers on vehicles in some cases to verify that all this stuff is correct. And it takes us hours just to book 1 truck on 1 load. And then that truck, we pay premium rates. And that truck falls off at the last second because of whatever, something slipped through the cracks on our checks. Now we have to pay more than we can charge the customer to get that load moved. So 1 or 2%, yeah, I think Star Car Dave nailed it. That other guy lives in Fantasyland. All right, let's see. Let's scroll down here. We've been on for about 2 hours now, I think, so we'll wrap this up soon.
10 seconds.
Oh, I've got another phone call here, I think. I don't know how I heard that. I didn't turn it on yet. From the 909 area code. Welcome to the show. We're going to wrap it up with your call.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking my call, and thanks for posting videos. You do a great job.
Thank you.
I've watched your videos on the QuickBooks, and I was curious if do you still use QuickBooks in your back office, or I was looking into Gusto. I'm starting out my new authority in the process. I'm past my 21 days. I'm starting off with the driver, who is my father. He's had a CDL for 12 years. I've had mine for 3.
Okay.
And so I'm also, there's a lot more that I'm picking up on the back office side because I have a 1099 employee coming in.
Okay.
So I just wanted to see what you thought about that and what you still use and, how you like to go about it.
All right, so QuickBooks is the end-all, be-all when it comes to accounting software. Everybody anywhere knows it. You just said Gusto. I just looked it up. I had never even heard of it before. So there are a lot of them. There's countless accounting programs out there. Again, I've never heard of Gusto. Looks like they might be reasonable, but I don't know anything about them.
They're more payroll.
Okay.
Program.
Intuit.
So the question was, do you like QuickBooks payroll?
I do. It's simple, easy to use, and if you're using QuickBooks to do all your other accounting, it all ties in really seamlessly and nice. So I do like it. I think it's the way to go. If you're using QuickBooks for your main bookkeeping, to use Intuit Payroll or QuickBooks Payroll, either one, and it automatically syncs all that stuff up, and your payroll stuff is on your books together, one shot, and you're done. I prefer that myself. There are several other payroll and accounting systems out there. I just like, and most of the major ones are recognized by accountants everywhere. I just like QuickBooks because it offers the most versatility. And if you're growing in the future, if you start bringing in things like, TMS systems and so forth, most of them are programmed to where they can sync up and import and export data directly into QuickBooks. But some of these other programs, not so much.
And on top of that, my next question was about TMS systems. What system do you use? I was looking into
TruckLogix.
Do you recommend them?
I do recommend them for a couple reasons. One, you don't need QuickBooks if you're just running trucking operations through it. If you ever get into a situation where you're doing outside of trucking, maybe doing storage or different things other than just trucking, you can upgrade to QuickBooks as well, and TruckLogix will sync up with QuickBooks to upload that data. TruckLogix is nice because it has a driver-facing portal where the driver will get the dispatches. The driver can take the document images and so forth. And honestly, I do not use TruckLogix right now because when I started several years ago, they were just getting off the ground. They were a great system, and I almost went with them. Sometimes I still wish I did go with them, but we ended up going with more of a fleet level, and now TruckLogix even offers fleet level services, but at the time they did not. So we went with something that was way more expensive and in some respects not as good as what TruckLogix offers.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, no, that's about it. On top of the TruckLogix, so do you I was going to ask if you use their payroll system or what payroll system do you use?
I do use Intuit Payroll. I use because I have all 1099 contractors. QuickBooks has different versions, and Intuit being the parent company of QuickBooks, I use Intuit Payroll. My accountant has a login for that as well. And then I have a separate, because I have multiple businesses. One of the advantages to, one of the disadvantages, I guess, to QuickBooks Online is each subscription can only run one business. I have QuickBooks desktop version, and I can run multiple businesses under the one program. So I've got multiple businesses I've got to run. And then I run the online payroll version, which still syncs up with that, and then my accountant has a copy of that as well. So he can easily access it, and I don't have to send him all the reports.
So are there any other, I think you said you had another program that you recommend for your onboarding for employees?
For onboarding for employees? Okay, yeah, I have, and this is something that I need to maybe put together a better package for. I use driver files online, and I actually can do the compliance side. That's a service, one of my other businesses I mentioned. It's under the UDrive Solutions is what it's called. And I do compliance for drivers. We build a driver file. I give you an online portal to where you can look at your driver files. If you're ever audited, you just send the auditor a link. It has all of the requirements, the application, all the way down through, keeps records of all their documents, and then sends out automatic reminders if anything expires and so forth. And that same portal allows you to pull the MVRs and things like that.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I've been able to pull the NVRs, and I was going through the FSMCA website, and that was the one thing I realized that was kind of the funny. They require all your employees to have an application.
Yes.
So it's like I actually have to make my father fill out an application.
Correct.
And not in terms of to apply him for the job, but to be DOT compliant.
Correct.
And there's a lot. I sat there and read it for an hour and a half. There's so much.
I am going to do a show specific
on
on record keeping and driver qualification files and so forth, but it's not just an application. There's actually very specific requirements for what needs to be in the application as well. So it can't just be a generic employment application. There's things specific to trucking.
Well, and they actually have a PDF available on their website for that. So yeah, I downloaded that, and I downloaded a few other documents.
Yep, that's
but
good.
I just wasn't sure.
The other thing that might slip through the cracks is if your dad is kind of working for you as a 1099, you would need to take the supervisor training for the drug testing program. FMCSA offers that online as well.
Got it. Okay, yeah. And then that's just a requirement just so that I can be able to say, I think this person is on drugs, correct?
Right, and it's training. Yes, and it's also training for what the process is. So if he's in an accident, you have to have testing done within a certain number of time. There's sometimes you have to have drug testing, sometimes alcohol, sometimes both. You need to know the process for doing all that, the process for flagging them. One of the big things right now that I think some of these drug testing programs are going to get busted because they send out a warning. I guess it is a warning. It's the driver list who was flagged, and they have to be tested sometime this quarter. Well, if your dad's the driver and he sees that email, he's supposed to proceed immediately to get tested. But he could just say, well, I didn't see it, right? But if he's in a fatality accident and they look back and see that he noticed he was flagged, but 2 weeks later he still hasn't taken his test. He obviously didn't immediately do it. He didn't comply. So he should never see that email. Only you should. And you should relay that to him, and then you have to have a company policy on exactly what immediate means, because FMCSA doesn't. Well, they do kind of define that. It means that everything that they do from that point on, from the time of being notified, is leading to them getting tested. So that means they need to be driving in that direction. They need to stop everything else they're doing and so forth to go get tested. That's their definition of immediately. But a lot of people bend those rules when they're small carriers, and they look for what we do. We get flagged like that, but we are we oversee the program, so we wait until we know a driver is maybe either going home or going near, and we look up that they have a testing location nearby they can get a truck into and so forth, and we try not to flag them until we know that it's an option to get tested. We don't want to flag somebody that's on a vacation somewhere, which you can do. Somebody could be on a vacation in Mexico and you flag them, and then that's a refusal to test because they don't go get tested or something. So you got to have really clear policies on how and when and all that's part of the program.
Perfect. Hey, who do you recommend for your drug consortium? I mean, I get a lot of people. I have one company. I won't really say who, but they try to say that to sign up for their consortium, I had to pay $450 for their initial fee for the drug consortium setup, and that was for me and my father.
No. So what I really recommend, there's places out there where it's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you anything to be on their list. You have to pay for the test when you go in. The test might be $50 or $100 depending on what you have to have done. Go to your local collection, wherever you would have a collection done. So someplace like Quest Diagnostics Labs or something like that. A local franchise branch usually has their own consortium set up, and you could get on that, find out what that is. A lot of times it's little to no cost.
Okay. Perfect.
There are some national companies that you could contact. NASTIC has one. NASTIC, they want you to go through the training. Once you go through the training, though, they give you all the testing supplies, and you don't have to send anybody to get to go give the sample. You could literally do it yourself. They give you all the sterile cups and everything, and you literally could do it yourself. But think about the liability there if there's an issue later. Who gave the test and who did the sample and all that. So I still prefer to send everything out, right? But that's an option as well.
And so what company do you go with managing a larger fleet for yourself?
Currently, right now, I am also with Nastic.
Nastic, okay.
Yeah. Now, once you get to a larger fleet, and you have more people, they'll put this would be the same for anybody you go with. They move you onto your own, where just your fleet is on their own little group, right? So you're not, because potentially let's say you're in a group of 10,000 people, 25% of the drivers of that group have to be tested. Well, if you have 20 drivers and quarter after quarter after quarter, nobody gets flagged, now it's kind of a gray area whether or not you're compliant, right? You're technically part of this group. They say you should be compliant, but nobody got flagged. So what they do is just to make sure everything's good, and you get 25% of your, well, it's 50%. 50% of your fleet gets tested. They put you in your own group.
Got it. Okay.
So when you're just one or two drivers, you'll be part of a bigger group, and you may or may not get flagged every quarter.
Okay. That's really it I have on my questions for the back end stuff. I want to warn people a little bit too. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of scammers out there, and the fact that I wasn't quite prepared to get my portion plates, and I have to wait about 2 weeks to get an appointment with the state. And there's only one DMV office that does the plates for my state of Colorado.
Yes.
And so it just, I wasn't prepared for that. I thought it would be an easy thing or something that would go through
IRP tags. IRP tags are a real headache. That's something that blindsides a lot of people because they think you just go register it just like you'd go register a car, but it doesn't work that way. Every state, and some states are a little different. Texas, for example, has a lot of different locations. Florida has a couple extra locations now, but they're all third party. Tennessee, for example, you have to go to that one specific location, but their online portals and everything are really, really efficient, so everything's easy. And they do temporary tags where certain states like Florida, again, you have to have the metal tag. They do not do a temporary. So in order to get a metal tag, you have to go to there in person to get it same day. Otherwise, it's by mail and it could take weeks, right? So every state is different. And because every state is different, that's the one area where I can't help everybody because every state's got a different requirement.
That's correct. Oh, and I also, speaking of different states, I know we talked a little bit about insurance. So I actually have a funny process now where I need to switch my father's CDL to Colorado because the insurance company that we want to go with, that's the most affordable, they want both of our CDLs to be in the same state.
Yeah, that happens
and
often.
They told us that. Yeah, they told us that the reason for that is that there's a lot of guys out of Florida that'll set up a business in Colorado or Texas or another state, and all their drivers are out of Florida.
Right.
So they're catching on to that, and they're saying, well, now you guys got to switch. You got to have all your drivers initially in the same state.
Yeah, or you need to be able to explain why they're not, right? So, for example, I have a Florida driver's license, but my business is in Tennessee now. But I have a physical office there, and I actually go there for 6 months out of the year, right? So I travel back and forth between the two. I do driver orientations there. I do, it's a physical office that I actually go to. A lot of people are trying to get around that by saying that they don't have anything there. It's literally they're trying to get away with a UPS box or something, and that just doesn't fly. But the insurance companies, that'll be the first thing they say is, well, how come you don't have a driver's license in that area? Right? So you have to be able to explain, well, I'm moving there. I'm going there. I'll be there, and my residence will be there at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are other restrictions with insurance. Some want you to only do business within 500 miles. So be careful of that. You don't want to be restricted. So, certain states have different restrictions. Some of them only want you to hire out of the same state. That's very common. So he has to be also in Colorado. You could probably only hire any driver, even if you grew a fleet. Probably under that policy, only have drivers that live in Colorado, which is a horrible restriction to have, right? It'd be the same. It'd be horrible to only be able to hire drivers out of the state of Florida, because how do you get them home on a regular basis without taking a hit? So those are policies that you might have to pay more for something else, but they're out there. Others, again, have limits on how far you can go. So, you know, a 500-mile limit is common, but if you live in Colorado and you can only do business within 500 miles, that could be tough too. So shop around for your insurance.
There's not a lot of good loads. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So
there's definitely not a lot of good loads coming out of Colorado. So that's what most of our thing is like. All right, we'll wait till we get a good one out, and then when we need to come back, we can find a load coming back. You know, there's a lot coming into Colorado. And then another funny thing they do is, you know, you can't expand too fast. They say they don't want us adding on more than a driver or two in the next year or two.
That's also very common.
I thought that was kind of...
No, that's very common. They don't want you... Because if you think about it, if you have one truck and you add a second truck, you just doubled the size of your fleet. So are you capable of managing a fleet that's double the size? If you have 2 trucks, you add 4. Now, if you have 100 trucks and you add 1 truck, it's not really a big deal for them, right? It doesn't seem to matter. But if you had 100 trucks and you added 100 more trucks, okay, you double the size of your fleet. So that's what they're afraid of. They just don't. They want to look at the fleet size and kind of a percentage of how many you add. It's very common that in the first year or two that you can only add, if you can add any, that you can't add more than 1 or 2 in the first couple of years.
Yeah. And then I would say the last thing I've encountered that was kind of a little funny in this whole process is that when I was looking for financing for my vehicle or for the truck, one company, and they're all pretty much self-financed, a lot of them.
Right.
One company wanted me to $20,000 cash in a business account open for at least 3 months.
Yes. Also,
I try to.
That's also very common.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, these are some of those things that have caught me off guard while starting, you know, getting my new authority started up. I definitely took your advice the moment I heard it about starting a business plan, and that got me looking into, you know, truck management systems, everything that I've been looking into. That got me right into that. And so, you know, I want to say thank you for your time and all your knowledge, and especially for the QuickBooks. That helped me a lot to go with that system for the accounting. And then I plan on the Trucking Logics actually will export a lot of your numbers straight over to QuickBooks as well. I plan on going through with them.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily even need QuickBooks if you're running TruckLogix, because it'll do a lot of that for you. You could just use like just the payroll portal or something, or maybe even stay on with that other program that you said you're using. Maybe stay on that if you're just keeping your numbers in TruckLogix, and that's up to you. But you could research those too. So, but thanks for the call. I'm going to put you back on hold, and we're going to start to wrap things up here. I mentioned DAT is changing some things, and I probably should not have said that because it's changing things on my level account, not across the board. I still love DAT. I still want to use DAT. We're just looking at different ways that we could situate things, because we're a broker and a carrier. We have to have a lot of different tools on top of just the load board, and our drivers each driver has their own version, and the tools that we give the drivers, DAT doesn't, they're not really offering some of the stuff the way that we have it set up right now. So they're getting ready to change it because they basically want to have everything has got to be kind of a la carte now. So I don't want to get too much into that until I get this figured out with them, but we're sorting things out, and we may just look at different options. So couple real quick things here. How prevalent is identity theft in trucking? What if a DOT number goes active and that's all has all your correct info? Ricky says this from YouTube. Extremely, extremely common, especially for brokers. And here's the scam they pull. And we try to vet this I know some of our drivers, they're all self-dispatched, so they talk to the brokers, and the brokers will promise them a rate, promise them a load, and then when we do the background check and the vetting of that broker, we find things that just don't line up. And sometimes we have to call that driver back and tell them, look, it's not going to work. We can't work with this company. And I can always hear the frustration in their voice, thinking that we're taking a load off their plate. But it's always a load that their broker is not going to pay, or we think it's a double broker scam or scheme or something. And it's a loss aversion thing. The driver thinks they're losing out, but they're really not, because we're protecting them, okay? It happens too much in this industry. Like I said when I was on with Sharon, it's very, very common. This is one of the shadiest businesses I've ever been in. It can be frustrating sometimes. And one of the common things for double brokering is a broker or identity theft, rather. It is a double brokering identity theft type thing. What happens is a broker will call and book a load with a truck, for example. They'll call you up and they'll negotiate a rate. You agree to it, and they will send you the rate con, and then they will bill everything out, and they won't pay you. Come to find out, the person that you thought was a broker was on the other side representing themselves as a carrier to another broker. And really, neither the broker or the carrier exist. They've got fake email addresses on both sides. They get the money, and then they ghost, and nobody ever hears from them again. There's been a lot of situations like that, sometimes in the millions of dollars. Scams like that have come through. And unfortunately, it's too often. It's more common that it is a legitimate company set up, where the company will it'll be a legitimate carrier. Usually will book a load. They'll double broker it to another carrier. And just to be clear, double brokering can only be done by a carrier. A broker can't double broker. Only a carrier can double broker. So when a carrier double brokers it, they book the load, telling the customer or the broker that they will be shipping it. Then they turn around without broker authority, because they're a carrier. Carriers don't have broker authority. They broker the load to someone else. Then they never pay that first carrier. They collect the money. They don't pay the first carrier. The carrier doesn't have any recourse. What are they to do? Because if they go back to the shipper says, well, I paid the carrier, and the load got delivered, so nobody on that end cares. The carrier that actually did the load is kind of in the wind, because who do they go after, right? The carrier that double brokered the load by this time is usually out of business, or close up the doors. There's a big conglomerate of these types of carriers and brokers and different things. I know in some of the big regions of Southern California, Glendale namely, Chicago area, and South Florida, Miami area. Those three areas have huge problems with certain groups of people that get together and do these types of scams. They run it through multiple companies, run it through factoring companies. That's another big scam. Run it through factoring companies that I think in some of these cases are involved in these scams, knowingly involved in these scams, collect the money from wherever they can, but don't pay anything out. And there's no recourse because they hide their trails too much. Happens a lot. It happens way too much. All right. And then we've got the one troll in here. And let's see. Okay, what if you live in your truck? You cannot live in your truck. You have a driver's license, and that driver's license has an address on it. You can't have a driver's license if you live in your truck. You have to have an address somewhere. So you can't legally live in your truck. You'd have to have an address. All right. think that's about all the questions. We've gone really, really late. I always start these shows. This is what I need to just stick to an hour, right? I do these and I say I'm going to come back. I did this before Christmas. I said I'm going to come back. I'm going to start doing these every week. I'm going to be more on top of it, and I will. I still plan on coming back full time, doing this all the time, at least once a week. I will do that. The problem I have is I do these shows, and my 1 hour show turns into 2-3 hours, and I can't do that every day. So I'm going to have to get more structured. I'm going to stick to my topics. I'm going to have to reel this in. I want to do this. I want to start making content. I actually was talking to Sharon just earlier today, saying that I've kind of reeled back my content for a few reasons, but this is one of them. Is I just go too long on this. I know there's a lot of questions people are asking, a lot of things, especially now. All my groups on Facebook and otherwise are just blowing up with different questions, new things. I think I need to start putting the content out. I plan on it, but I'm going to have to reel in some of the 3-hour shows, start cutting it back to an hour. And South Texas also has a huge scam problem. Yeah, really anywhere across the border there's a lot of scams. I know Southern California is a big part of it. There are a lot of stuff in Southern Texas. But what we've noticed is that there are certain geographic areas, definitely anywhere along the border, you have to be careful. But definitely Southern California, definitely Chicago, and definitely Miami. Those are huge ones. If we see something from those areas, and a lot of times these brokers and carriers and stuff are getting wise to that, and they're opening addresses in other places, which is another thing we talked about today. Usually P.O. boxes or whatever, they're registered that way, and you start tying 2 and 2 together, and you look at their phone number. Their phone number is from another state, or they're affiliated with another company from one of those other locations or something. So. All right. Have a good night, everybody. As always, remember, you got to earn it because nobody owes you anything. You got to get out there, aim high, dream big, strategize your plan, earn your success. Have a good night. I am out.